release the Snyder Cut. Well, if that happens, there may be consequences. Boy, well, release it anyway, because, boy, I just got to see it, you know. But there's this recent article of a Screen Rant by Brad Curran, I guess. The unforeseen consequences of the Justice League Snyder Cut's release. And it's still a big if that would ever happen. And there's probably the biggest stumbling block I always thought was just how finished is it? You know, I've heard different percentages. It largely sounds pretty complete, but still a lot of stuff to go in it. How much would that cost, and that sort of thing. But also just the Warner Brothers. Look, at this point, I still don't think they know what they're doing. And to try to map out where to go from this, and all the statements about, well, we don't want to copy Marvel. Well, you never really did. Your shared universe, you did ass backwards. You tried to do Infinity War first. And now you're kind of are copying Marvel, where you have basically standalone films, but they are connected. The idea that these are all standalone and don't connect at all. Maybe the Batman movie will be that, but Aquaman most certainly wasn't. That movie is a direct follow-up from the Justice League, and you can twist it any way you want, but it is. Now, they reduced it down to just a little bit of dialogue, but it's there nonetheless. And, of course, the Justice League film sets up Aquaman for his own film, which went on to make $1 billion. So that is their first big hit with Aquaman. And so what do you do? And so now you've got this, you've got Wonder Woman, which was their first big success, and then you got Aquaman. And they're all a part of that. You know, they came out of casting from Zack Snyder's vision there. And so there's two you've got. And of course, Shazam comes along, and it's also, it's a shared universe. I don't care how you want to put it. You know, it wasn't Henry Cavill, of course, but Superman briefly is in the film. We didn't get to see his head. But there you go. I suppose one could argue that each film is its own version, own multiversal version of itself, and they're not connected at all. What have you. There they are. And so the idea from the article is, despite the fact that there'd been other alternate cuts of films, and it mentions it, you know, the Blade Runner, and then the Superman 2, the Donner cut, so many years later, got released, and you saw that version of where it could have been and all that. Whereas here, the possible problems is that the Justice League was part of this larger franchise that they were pushing, and are still trying to figure out what to do. So it doesn't really go to the point that I would suspect that what if the Snyder Cut is incredibly popular? You know, what if the release, and now there's like it's almost like a cult, like a legend for it. You know, so the curiosity factor alone should make it quite profitable. However, in what format they want to release it, you know, online or something like that. And so what if it is? And then you're moving forward with your new version of movies, which just seems to be all over the place. Right now, they're looking to perhaps win big with the Joker movie. Well, of course, that really is a standalone film. It's set in its own thing. It's not even really the Joker, you know. It's just this weird other version of it. And then they talk about, they might want to do others. Meanwhile, the Batman, that's its own thing. It's no longer connected to the idea was, well, is this supposed to be the younger version of the Ben Affleck Batman? And for a while it seemed to be, because they said, it's going to be set in the 90s or something like that. I don't know why they would even bother with that at this point, because it's not the Ben Affleck Batman, especially since they're pursuing a black man, the Jeffrey Wright from Westworld, to be Commissioner Gordon. Well, he's not going to grow up to be J.K. Simmons. So obviously that goes on. The other theory, which has always been there, was because at one point they discussed the Flash movie would be Flashpoint, and with that story you could do an alternate timeline result where you reboot your shared universe, and then you got a blank slate, more or less, to go forward, and even to the point that you could retire the Ben Affleck Batman and introduce your new one, which would have been actually kind of cool. But at this point, I don't think they could get Ben Affleck to come in and shoot a few cameo scenes to be the bookend of a Flashpoint movie, and then at the end, the Batman mask is pulled off, and oh, it's Robert Pattinson, and the Flash, under the effects of the new universe, doesn't realize there's been this drastic change. Yeah, I guess that's how they could have done it, but I don't know if that's what they're going to do. The other rumor, I think it was Grace Randolph, whatever, saying she'd heard that the Wonder Woman movie will involve time travel, and then it could do the same thing, and just sort of subtly suggest that this is why things are different. And then there would be a new Superman as well, because nothing official has been said, but it's looking more and more like Henry Cavill is done. He won't be Superman anymore, and it's too bad, because I think he could have made a great one. I just don't think he ever got the vehicle to really flesh out his talents. At this point, Man of Steel was the best he got, and that's just too bad. So there they are, but the consequences, he says that this would kind of spoil the pot for future auteur directors and the people that are think outside the box and all this sort of thing. And that might deny us future great directors like Christopher Nolan. Oddly enough, the producer of Man of Steel, the one who hired Zack Snyder to oversee. And the long-winded story about how this goes. Man of Steel is probably the closest thing to a pure Zack Snyder version of the DC superheroes. Because Batman vs. Superman, it was not supposed to be the sequel. He was going to do another Superman film. And then that's Warner Brothers meddling. And so they do that, and there was all the hype, and it seemed like it was going to be a big deal, but then people saw it and got upset by it. And there again, the longer cut is much better. It's still a flawed film, in my opinion, but it is much better than the theatrical release, which was pretty bad. And so that spoiled the pot even more. But they'd already ordered up Justice League, assuming they had a hit and all this sort of stuff. Then they got scared. And they were meddling and meddling and meddling and meddling. And then the terrible thing with Zack Snyder's family and all that. And then at the 11th hour, bring in Joss Whedon to give us a Marvel movie. And then I think Joss Whedon, to his credit, said, I need more time. You need to cancel the release date if I got to redo this movie. No. We got to have it out on time so we can get our bonus pay. So that's why you ended up with what you have. Now, the idea that they would not hire what they would consider risky directors because there might be a fan backlash if they don't get the full cut that director shot. I'm not so certain, because the real lesson here, and Curran does mention it in his article, is that the 11th hour changes like that was the mistake. It was too late to do this after they got the reactions for Batman versus Superman, and Justice League is already underway. Because keep in mind, the cut that we're talking about is probably a reshot cut that they had ordered Zack to do while he was in the middle of making a much longer period, because originally it was supposed to be 2 films. And so then he was already changing it, before he left. So you keep doing that, and by the time you finally get to the end, you've got this mess. That's the lesson to learn, not whether or not your director is going to go off the wall, because if they go off the wall, you make those decisions at the outset. And Zack Snyder himself discussed this. He had an original script, and they actually said, no, you're not doing that one. It was too wild and too crazy. And so that's when you make your decision, and once you're pretty much done, you can't then decide, no, cancel that and do it. So of course they were going to lose money on it, because they basically spent enough money on this for 2 films, but they only had 1, and that was just stupid. And there is a certain thing as too late, and it was too late to replace Zack Snyder's version of the film. You were stuck with it, whether it was good or bad, or whether we liked it or not. It was too late. The decision to make, to move away from him or what have you, was earlier on, but at the time they thought they had a hit on their hands, and they didn't. And that's that. So the real lesson is the 11th hour. It says, oh, well, this might make people want to see the Air cut. I really doubt that the Air cut has that much more than what the Snyder Cut has, although some of the ideas that Ayer talked about sounded a lot better than what Suicide Squad became, which is easily the worst of the DCEU movies. And that's all very sad, because the original ideas sound a lot better, but it just, didn't happen. There again, meddling. And of course, the problem with Suicide Squad is, boy, they fast-tracked that and rush it out there. Another mistake in all this, of course, wanting to catch up to Marvel and get in on the superhero craze and all that. And that was a mistake. It most certainly was. So that's the lesson to learn, not that you're going to avoid directors that you somehow are going to mystically know will be a problem down the road. You've got to set in stone what it is you want, what you're hiring them to do, and when they present, this is the movie I intend to shoot, this is the script, this is you've got to say, okay, go do it at some point, and then that's it. After the guy has shot it, and then you come in and say, I want you to shoot an entirely new movie. Saying this scene or that scene and that sort of thing. There's always reshoots of this and that. And sometimes it's necessary. The editing process just doesn't quite fit with what they thought they had and that sort of thing. But to shoot an entirely new, which is what happened here for the most part. And this is, and there again, that's not entirely new. There's been a World War Z, which ended up saving the movie, apparently. There's a whole third act that they cut out and reshot. And so, there's precedence there for how things work. But, and that it intends on whether or not you have the time to do it, whether or not you can do it. If they could have canceled the release and shot a different movie, who knows? Maybe it would have been an entirely different outcome and no one would care about the Snyder Cut anymore, because the one they got was pretty good. But that's not how it happened. So, yes, 11th hour changes is the mistake for the most part here. And there's a certain time when you make your decision of what movie you want to make, and when that time has passed, it has passed. So, as far as the Snyder Cut coming out, we still don't really know. But at this point, a lot of noise has been made. I think largely effective. And also, he goes into, could this lead to the Cyborg movie coming back? Because Cyborg, actually, even in the Justice League film, it has some pretty interesting scenes. We now know some of the leaked stuff about the Snyder Cut. It had a lot more, and really, certainly more than what Aquaman got, that they were setting up a possibility for his own film, and actually it looked like it could have been quite interesting. But unfortunately, well, the rest. So, maybe so. Obviously, the actor, he's been a vocal supporter of the Snyder Cut. Gee, I wonder why. But also because, he likes it. And Aquaman, of course, Jason Momoa, he's now seen the cut. And he's been saying they should release it. So, yeah, they should. However they do it, I prefer it on Blu-ray, but probably it'll be online or something like that. But the consequences that I'm not sure that I'm in agreement with the article here, that it maybe into some thinking, it could be problematic for the hiring of directors that they just have a bad feeling about or what have you. But more so is this, like I said, just the timing, scheduling, and you can't try to fix it at the last minute like that, especially with that amount of money squandered. And it was all unnecessary. Should have just stuck with the plan and hoped for the best. Oh well. Odd thing is, after all this, maybe it has a chance to make more money than it would have had if it had been released in its original format, because there was a lot of negativity and anger towards Batman versus Superman at the time, and so Justice League was probably going to suffer from that no matter what. But oddly enough, Wonder Woman had come out in between and done very well. So who knows? But in an alternate universe, it happened that way. But even though finally the narrative overall for their DCEU and what have you could still fit within their pursuing of the Crisis on Infinite Earths for the CW, which will apparently feature characters from their DC Universe shows and stuff like that. So, and then it was rumored, I don't know if it's confirmed, that they will at least acknowledge the DCEU, because it's all about multiverse and alternate realities and whatnot. So if they do that, then that's all you got to do, is just say, well, the Snyder Cut is this other version of what happened in another universe. So that's all it is. And they move on with whatever direction they're going to go into, because at this point, I'm pretty sure they don't know. They have a Batman film, and that's it, after Wonder Woman. So we'll see what happens there. Wonder Woman certainly will be the one to see. As for the Flash movie, it's still being talked about that it'll be done. The It director is supposed to be taking it on. And if that happens, well, maybe they'll do that with the Flash. And they can still use like footage from Justice League and stuff to have a bookend with Ben Affleck Batman and then Robert Pattinson's Batman at the end or something like that. Could probably do something like that. And that's all it would really take. And then they actually got to think of something for the future of their films, and eventually probably get to a new Justice League film. And we'll have to see where that goes. All right. Thank you for watching and listening and bearing with me. Please like and subscribe. And while you're here, you might as well check out that link description below. That'll take you to my mini stores that have plenty of goodies for you. And also, yes, I have the link to the Screen Rant article, so you can check that out too. Bye-bye.